When I came into motherhood, I was not recovering yet. I was a full-blown overachiever. I was like, oh, well, I can still be everything. Never underestimate the spiritual power of doing temporal things well. So that's been very helpful as a mom, where a lot of what you're doing feels just, you're cleaning up and you're doing the diapers and things like that.
Motherhood is just the longest experiment in patience. You don't get to know what you've accomplished for, say, 18 years or longer. Your worth just is. That's the concept of Pretty Sisters, and the message I want to get across is that you are worthy. You just are.
Welcome to the Pretty Sister Podcast. I'm your host, Callie Stoyer, and I'm so happy that you're here today. I'm especially excited. Well, first, let me just welcome you to this community of sisterhood and friendship, positivity, joy, all good things. That's what we're bringing to you. So thank you for taking the time to be here. I love when people find this content and find us, because we're looking for you. So glad you're here. But especially because today I have a very special guest for you. I think I say that every time. I have a very special guest, but that's how I feel. That's how I feel about the Pretty Sisters that come and do this podcast with me. And this one is no different. This is Lauren Gull that I'm introducing you to today. And she is somebody, we've known each other for, it's probably been 10 years now.
Yeah.
When did you get it? It was when you came home from your mission. You
Yeah,
served
so
a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in...
I think I got home the end of 2015.
2015.
So yeah.
It's been 10 years.
Yeah.
And where did you serve again? You were in...
Argentina.
Argentina. That's right. I had a son that also served in Argentina.
Yeah,
Brayden
yes.
served there. Yeah. So she came home from her mission and dove right into parenting with me, because you were in an in-between
True.
season
I hadn't
of
even
life.
met you.
Yes, this is, maybe I shouldn't say this. What does this say about me?
You knew my birth.
Actually, yes, it's the confidence I had in your mother.
Yes.
Because her mother is a very pretty sister to me. Such a wonderful woman. We attended church together, and I was going, what was I doing? I was going on a trip. And
I feel like it was the Dominican Republic.
It was the Dominican Republic. You have such a good memory.
Well, it was such a momentous time for me.
And I was looking for somebody to help me watch my kids. And your mom was like, oh, my daughter will be home next week. She has nothing to do for like a period of time before you went back to school. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure she'd love to watch her kids. And I said, great, that sounds great. If she's like you, and she just promised, she's like, if you like me, you're going to like her. I was like, well, I love you. So that's the power of being a pretty sister, and just like having these relationships and connections, because you can vouch for each other and help each other and support one another. And so, yes, it's fun to remember this, because I had forgotten how we met. Yeah. But you came home, and I think I was gone, and you watched my kids for a week, and
they were great.
And they were great, and you were great. And that was the beginning of a beautiful thing, because then you continued to work for me on and off for the last few years. You've been deep, and we're going to talk about this. She's been deep in the mothering phase herself.
It's fun stuff.
And so I have not had her attention or her working for me, because she's been doing more important things. But prior to that, you worked on and off for me for a long time.
Yeah.
It was great in many different ways. Because you went on to get your college degree, and she was working, helping me with social media and with personal assisting and all kinds of great things. She's like somebody that is so organized. Okay, well, I'm so happy you're here.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much. And she does have two beautiful little girls. Mandy's 3 now, and Sage is a year old.
Yeah.
So cute and adorable.
Very cute.
So she's been busy mothering in the thick of it. Even when she was talking to me about some of the things that we're going to chat about with you, and she made some notes, and I was looking through it. In my heart, I wanted to cry, and I wanted to hug you, and I just had like these feelings come back to me, because I've had all of those experiences and emotions and thoughts and feelings about motherhood. Yeah. And the stage that you're at. I have a lot of empathy and excitement for you young mothers, because I know the beauty and joy of what you're doing. And I also know to my bones and core how hard it is on so many different levels, like physically, emotionally. It's a beautiful, hard, messy stage of life that has so many gifts and joys and so many trials just riddled through it.
And it's like back to back. Like one minute
Yes.
you'll be having the most beautiful moment of your whole life with your daughter, and she's like telling you all this stuff. And then the next minute it's like screaming and
you're like, what did I sign up for? What am I even doing? So we're going to talk about that. Can we talk about it?
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of motherhood, and just all the feelings and all the emotions. And maybe through this conversation, we can come out with something that's helpful for those of you who are listening, something to maybe look forward to, or even you older mothers who have been there, you can just smile and laugh along with me of like, whew, we did that. Don't have to do it again. Although I know, and I'm not quite there yet. I'm not a full-time grandmother yet. I have I call them my practice ones. They feel like my grandkids because they're my adopted son that we've kind of brought into the family, has two, and we get to practice on them, which is great. But it's, no matter what stage you're at, and even if you don't have your own kids and you just kind of are the aunt or the, family member helping, we all have the opportunity to help, or at least we could if we want to, in this huge effort of raising up this next generation, which is such an important process. So hopefully there's something you're going to gain from this conversation, no matter what angle you're looking at it from. Okay, so Lauren, to get us started, I know you had mentioned that you entered motherhood as a recovering overachiever, and yes. Or maybe you didn't even realize that was what you were recovering from, but it's like once you get thrown into it, you've probably had to learn some things about yourself. So yes. Let's just talk about that, because that made me laugh when you said that. I was like, oh, I have so many thoughts and feelings about that too. Yes. But what makes you say that, and what did you experience?
Well, so I think throughout my life, I've always kind of taken my self-worth from the things that I did and the things I accomplished. And it was very tied to like, oh, I got good grades, or, oh, I did this cool thing in school, and as you grow up, you have those opportunities because you're in high school and then you're in college. And so there are these outlets for you to have opportunities to get self-worth from places that maybe they aren't supposed to come from.
Although, can I just, the thought came to mind that I think that's normal though. Don't beat yourself up about that, because, and especially as I've been raising these younger kids, until you're a mother and you have another life that's dependent on you, life is in large part all about you. And you're being taught and raised to go to school and to, serve the mission and get your degree. And it really is a path of your development, your learning, your growth. And so naturally, when you understand that, there is going to be a transition when you go into mothering of all of a sudden, it's not all about you anymore.
Yeah, that's so true. And it is true that I think it's part of everyone's development to go from this place of like self-centeredness and trying to prove yourself to grounding and finding out what you're really about and what you really care about and what's really important. So it is true. So yes, when I came into motherhood, I was not recovering yet. I was a full-blown overachiever. And so I was committed to doing that even after I had my first daughter. I was like, oh, well, I can still be everything. And and I think it's so important. Like there's such a narrative now of like, oh, you have to be everything you want to be. You have to be the career woman, and you have to be mom, and you have to have all these great friendships, and you have to be a wonderful wife. And I think it's important to recognize that there are seasons for that. And I think you and I both agree that empowering women is so important, and women can do anything. But I think the seasons are important to recognize as well. And that there's some seasons where you have to change the percentages a little bit of each of those things. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to be 100% at all of them. And that's not possible.
Right. No, it's not. I'm glad you've actually been wise to, you're only 3 years into this parenting stuff. Yep. And the fact that you've got this figured out right now and giving yourself some more grace, I think is going to help you in the process in the long run as you continue to, if you're going to have more kids, but as you continue in this parenting process. That's a lesson that I think people spend a long time trying to figure out as you're trying to balance chasing this concept of balance, that it's a concept that can happen in some ways. I like you want to say it's not an all or nothing situation. We can do and have so many parts of us, but the seasonality part that you brought up is so important, because sometimes we're going to be all in on a work project if you're working, or you're going to be all in on, giving birth and having that newborn at home. I mean, it just kind of comes and goes, and you've got to learn to be okay with that. And once you reconcile it, it becomes a lot easier. Has that been your experience?
Yes.
Once you kind of let go of the perfectionism, which can be a process, there's layers of it. You're probably peeling back the layers of it.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I'm a recovering overachiever and perfectionist. We're still in the recovery process. For me, it's so important to recognize that it takes time, that process. Like you can't change your mindset overnight.
Yeah.
And I did try to do that too. I was like, okay, well, if I can't do it the way that I imagined, I'm going to just flip a switch and be exactly what I want to be. And it doesn't work that way.
No.
It's a very long, mindset shift. And I'm still working on it sometimes.
I think because it does take time to work on, and I wish I could tell you that you've got it. And I did say, well, you're learning this early, but you need to practice. I think all things you've got to recognize, it's a practice. I'm practicing this. And one of my favorite things that I learned a while back that's been helpful. Do you want to hear a couple tips on this? Just that came to mind. That's helped me practice is keeping, and I learned this specifically from Johnny Covey, and he has a great book on it. I've had him on the podcast before, but he has this theory of 3 commitments that you keep. I don't know if I've told you this before, but anyway, we talked about it on the podcast, but let me remind anyone who doesn't remember. If you practice keeping these 3 commitments, it's very helpful. Commitment number 1 is just to do your best. You just have to do your best. And that right there takes the weight off, because especially if you're somebody who's caught in the mindset of perfectionism, when you just learn to recognize my best is good enough, at the end of the day, if there's toys on the floor and there's hair that wasn't ever brushed and somebody's got jam on their face or whatever, that, if you can just say, this was the best I could do today and accept your best, it's so freeing, you guys. It's so freeing. And then on the flip side of that, you accept the best of others. So sometimes your 2-year-old's best isn't what you expected, right?
Yes.
And we think that we want them to, just behave in all of these ways that we've taught them, but maybe they're tired, maybe they're, whatever. We have to learn to accept their best. So it's not just the best of ourselves, but it's accepting our best, accepting the best of others. And when you do that, you're like, life feels a little bit easier. So that's commitment number 1. Commitment number 2 is to be respectful to yourself, okay? Respectful to yourself and respectful also to others on the flip side. And the way that looks is when we do feel like we're falling short and we want to beat ourselves up, the woulda, shoulda, couldas, and all of those, if I had only, or if I, hadn't said this or whatnot. If you're respectful to yourself, you wouldn't be so critical. Right? You wouldn't be putting yourself down. You would be, again, they're close to accepting your best, but it's a little bit different because it's being respectful to yourself.
Yeah. Kind of giving yourself grace.
Yes. And recognizing your divinity and who you are and that you're doing your best. And so let's be kind. Let's be generous with ourselves and with others. And so that's also helpful with toddlers, because I often would forget who they were that I was being entrusted to raise. And it's tempting to forget because you're just dealing with the 2-year-old kid or the 5-year-old kid or the teenage kid. I mean, all stages have some challenges, but when you pause and you realize, actually, this is a really great spirit. This is a really great person. And you almost just wonder, what are they going to do? What are they going to accomplish? What are they going to be? And you have to just attach yourself to that respect for them. You treat them differently.
Yeah.
And
I feel like a lot of times with ourselves, and also sometimes when I look at my daughter who's 3, not so much the 1-year-old yet because she's still developing, but my daughter who's 3, the very same personality traits that frustrate me or that I just drive me up a wall, I'm like, no, she needs that in order to be who I know she's going to be and who she needs to be, and to survive and to thrive and to be everything that she's created to be. Yes, she is so strong-willed, but also she needs to be strong-willed, right, in order to be everything that she was made to be.
And that's just really seeing them and being respectful of who they are and learning to do that. Then it helps you to not try to change them, not try to control them, but just respect for myself, respect for them.
And to channel it too.
Yes, which can be, I mean, these things aren't super easy, but they're just like things to remember that will help you. And the last one, really quick, is just to be present. Because we can be beating ourselves up about what we just did or did wrong, worrying about the past. And we can also be super anxious. Anxiety is a really top problem that people are faced with. So the more we can help give tools to not be anxious over the future, at the age of 3, we don't need to worry about where she's going to college yet. But yet people do. I mean, you can get really anxious about all of that. But just get present, because you don't want to let life pass you by. You don't want to miss all the moments. You don't want to be chasing happiness. You just want to be present. And so when you catch yourself worrying in either direction, you just say, no, I'm just going to enjoy this moment. So, I mean, I know it sounds a little easier than it is when you're in your situation, but those are some tools that I think will be super helpful to you.
No, that's so good. I love all of those.
3 commitments. Okay. So you've been recovering on this overachiever pathway. And I know you, in the process, have learned some things about your self-worth. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I think we all kind of go through a journey of discovering our self-worth, because we start off as like a little 3-year-old who believes that they're the greatest thing to ever walk the face of the planet. And my 2-year-old or my 3-year-old will come into the room and be like, Mom, look at my dress. I am so pretty. and it, not just physical things, but also like who they are. And like, she has this mindset that like, I am the best thing to walk into this room. And it's true. But we lose that over time, and
hopefully not. Like, the more you can keep and foster that, I say go for it. In fact, I love how you were saying before her favorite color.
Oh, yes. Favorite color is pink.
Makes me so proud. In fact, let me just show everyone my shoes I have on today. I've got some pink boots, and, you can't beat the pink out of me.
Pink is important.
So, okay. So keep going. You were about your self-worth.
I've always tied it to my productivity and my accomplishments. And as a mom, that is not healthy, because you do the same things all day long. You do the dishes. I feel like there's some days where I spend the entire day prepping food, eating food, cleaning food, prepping food, eating food, cleaning food. And that's the whole day. And so to have my self-worth and who this
highly educated, multilingual, just capable person doing that feels frustrating.
Well, and to measure whether I had value that day or whether what I was doing was important based on that is not healthy. There's a quote that I think it's Henry B. Eyring said, never underestimate the spiritual power of doing temporal things well. So that's been very helpful as a mom, where a lot of what you're doing feels just, you're cleaning up and you're doing the diapers and things like that. I've noticed as my girls have gotten older, and even when Mandy, my oldest, was a baby, I remember days when she was fussy as a baby. This is so sad. But if she was fussy and we were around people, I felt so embarrassed, because I was like,
how dare you have a fussy baby?
Right. Oh, how dare I? And so even at that young age, and as she's gotten older, there's more things. And so I've recognized, my normal, what I've been trained to have my self-worth tied to my accomplishments, that cannot be connected to my children's behavior, because that is so unhealthy for them and for me.
Yes.
And so that has been something that I've been on a journey to work through, is realizing that my children's behavior is not a measure of whether I'm doing a good job. And obviously we want to discipline, and we want to teach them, and we want to do all those things. And I think this goes beyond motherhood too, because I think there's a lot of areas in our life where we attach our self-worth to things that either we have little control over or things that aren't healthy. And really our worth doesn't change, but our perception of it does. And so I've had to recognize that that's not a healthy way to live, and replace that with, okay, so where does my worth actually come from?
Have you figured it out yet?
Well, from my divinity.
I have some thoughts about that.
Yes. Well, let's hear what you say.
Well, I love where you're going with all of this, because it is such an important thing to talk about. And I would say to you, and I think you know this, is that your worth just is. That's the concept of Pretty Sisters. And the message I want to get across is that you are worthy. You just are. And if you think about your beautiful little children that are actually at my house right now, that my husband's babysitting for us while we record this, and they're so cute, they're perfect. You know, they're beautiful. And they came to you like that, right? When they came out, and there's nothing like that moment when you hold your child for the first time, and it's so miraculous and you feel so much love.
Yeah.
And they're just perfect, just straight from heaven. And that never changes. That's the thing. I mean, we want to, attach so many different things to our value and our worth, but our worth just is. We are worthy. And we have to, the more we connect to that divinity inside of us, the more we can be happy. I think the more we can live our purpose and find meaning in life when we just truly understand who we are and accept ourselves in that way.
And I would be so sad if my daughter at the end of the day said, I was not a good person today, or I wasn't good today because I didn't eat my dinner, or because I wasn't able to make my bed today. Right. I would be so sad if she tied her worth to that. And so what does our Father who created us think when we do that?
Yeah. Well, in our purpose, I mean, we're here, I believe, on this earth to learn and to grow, to become more like him. I mean, we're here for this probationary time to do that, to learn to be more Christ-like, to be more loving, to be more God-like, right? And so we're having all these experiences that teach us. These experiences aren't, there's good and bad experiences, but we're here to learn from them. So it's not like we want to have our kids not have any of them. They're supposed to have them. They're supposed to have all of the range of experiences and also the range of emotions. And I think we do live in a time and age where we sometimes either want to shove those emotions down or ignore them. But they're supposed to be signals and clues to help us develop, to help us learn and grow. So even when our kids are expressing themselves in a way that maybe we don't want them to culturally, that's still them expressing an emotion that we have to just pay attention to and solve. I mean, when they're hungry, they cry, and then that's how we know to feed them. They learn, it's such a rudimentary process when they're little, and it gets a little bit more complicated as they age, but it can be that simple if we learn to understand emotions and how to read them and not ignore them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like it's easier when they're little because they're crying or screaming. They get into teens and they maybe aren't expressing. It's like more of a guessing game and to help them navigate it, especially if people are trying to hide them and try to meet expectations and shove them down and show up certain ways and being chameleons and all of that. It becomes harder, but that's what I believe this emotional intelligence that is being talked about more helps us to understand, that we don't just need to be learning how to be smart and learning knowledge and information, which is important. I'm a big fan of that, but we also need to understand how to learn how to read and navigate our emotions properly so that we can be mature in that way as well.
Yeah.
I think I just took a tangent. We need to come back to where we were.
Tangents are great. Tangents are where all the best stuff comes from.
Stuff is. Well, tangenting again, then I'll just say, when you were talking about that you wake up and you feel like, okay, I just feed him and then I do the dishes and then I feed him. It's like 3 meals and you're doing that all. I used to feel that so much. In fact, when the Twilight movies came out and all the vampire stuff in those books, and I read them, I was like, man, why can't we just be vampires? They don't eat. They don't eat and they don't sleep. They don't need those things. Like that, as a mother, was what I was always feeling like, oh my gosh, I just have to feed him again and clean up. I just did that and I have to do it again. And then the vampires don't eat. And I thought, that is not fair that we have to eat and I have to feed these kids all the time. But we do, and that's okay. I've learned to appreciate that.
Well, and I feel like it also, I wish I had this quote with me, but I'll send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I read this quote once that talked about that God ordained the common lot of mankind to be what it is. Like he's the one that made it. So we have to eat and we have to be preparing food all day. And we have to, back in the day, like catch the food and all that stuff.
It's a lot easier now. I mean, heaven forbid we're out shooting the cow or all the things they had to do.
Yeah. And so the quote just said something about like, the measure of true greatness is doing well the things that God ordained to be the common lot of all mankind. Like that's not an accident that's part of everyone's life. Everyone has to eat.
Well, I think it's learning that you don't shirk the work that has to be done, that we are here to work and to learn and to grow. And the more people want to get out of it, and think that they're chasing happiness by not doing anything isn't going to work because of that very law that we actually have to work. There's joy in that learning new skills, in the growth, and all that comes from that. It's part of our purpose. And so the trick then is finding joy in the work that you choose to do.
Yeah.
Which is why I think as mothers, it's so important to get present to your situation every day and find joy in that process, to not wish it away, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna be happy when these kids go to sleep and sleep through the night. We got to get aware of those thoughts of what we're saying, because, well, if you're always pushing that happiness off, you're never going to find it. You got to celebrate in the moment. One other thing that came to mind, I was years ago, because we lived in Boston, I was at a conference where Clayton Christensen was speaking. And I remember him saying, and he's a Harvard professor, he's now passed away, but a magnificent, great man, the author of How Will You Measure Your Life? I think that's the title of it, favorite book of mine. Anyway, he was speaking to me, I felt like, in the audience. I was a young mother. I think I probably had 2 or 3 little kids at the time. But he was talking about this concept of measuring your life. And this was pre him even writing the book. But he said that motherhood is just the longest experiment in patience, because you don't get to know what you've accomplished for, say, 18 years or longer. You put in all this work, but it's going to be 18 years before you really get to sit back and appreciate that work. And yes, there's small moments and wins in between and so many beautiful things, but you're not done with that job for a very long time. And so the amount of patience and endurance that it requires is real, but that it's worth it. And I think I was just crying, like tears coming down, because I was feeling like, that's right, no one thanks me, and I'm tired, and all the things I felt. But I was like, okay, it's just, I'm learning delayed gratification, and you are. It's the biggest experiment in delayed gratification. And he was equating it to being such a monumental thing that I don't know that mothers at the time really understand the work that you're about and how grand and fantastic it is. Because he was saying, somebody who's working on that 4-year PhD and putting all that grit and work into it is going to get their result. I mean, it feels hard and heavy. And here he is, a professor at Harvard, and it feels like a really big deal, but you're going to get, it's going to get published and you're going to end in 4 years. That's nothing compared to mothering. He's like, it's nothing compared to what you mothers are doing.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, there's nothing measurable that you can check off or say, see, look how much further we are on this goal. Or there's nothing tangible at the end of the day to say, yes, I did a good job today. And so you have to, and as women, and I think all people, we have such a tendency to only remember the things we did wrong and to beat ourselves up. And so at the end of the day, instead of going over, okay, I was so patient these 10 times. Oh, but then I lost it this once. And so we only pay attention to the one time that we lost it. Or, we had this, me and my daughter had this amazing conversation, and we really bonded, and she was so cute, but we don't remember that. We only remember the stuff at the end of the day that's bad. And so that's another thing, is retraining my brain to, I heard somebody once talk about, keeping a journal of payday moments as a mother.
I love
because you don't get paid, but there are these moments, if you are watching for them, that are your payday, and that are the reward for everything that you're putting into it. And so I love that concept. And so I've been starting to pay attention, and I have a little note on my phone of this was a payday moment.
Yes. Well, I think it's so important, because we can be our harshest critic, but we can choose to not be, if we'll put some awareness into it. Again, having some grace for ourselves, learning how to recognize the wins, celebrate the wins. And I say to you, to other young moms, do celebrate the wins. Celebrate every day accomplished is a big win, where you're surviving and the kids are surviving. Those are huge. And I think that it's really helpful. Of course, I'm going to say this, and you're all going to smile, because of course I'm going to say your friends are helpful. Your fellow pretty sisters. I think when I look back at mothering, I always, no matter where I was in the stage of it or where I was living, one of the first things I always did and survived because of was find friendship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your mother was a friend of mine when I lived in Maine. You know, I would always try to circle myself with other women in a similar situation, whether it was, you know, friends I was chatting with at dance practice, because I'm with the dance moms right now while we're waiting for our kids, or friends I made at football practice, or the church friends, wherever. I found that the sisterhood that I would surround myself with always helped me to get through the tough times and also to celebrate the wins, because I could celebrate with them, or I could share with them and commiserate with them and talk with them. And they also could celebrate me, because since we do have a tendency to be our hardest critics, that other women I have found will help me remember the things I'm doing right and be the first to be like, you know, no, you're doing, you know, just friends have such a great way of calling out those beautiful things about each other that maybe we don't see, to buoy you up.
Yeah.
I remember, you know, Nikki Knighton, also a good friend of your mother's, we would run together and train. She helped me train for triathlons. And she was always just like, we felt like our running was therapy. And I was like, this is better therapy than anything I could pay for, because we would just talk it out.
Totally.
So helpful.
Yeah. And every time I get together with friends that are in the same stage of raising young kids, it's always like one of their kids will like yell or scream, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And it's like, no, are you kidding me? That is so normal. My kid does that all the time. And like, that happens every time that we get together. It's like
normalizes your experiences.
Yes. And it's like, no, you're not a bad mom because your child is having a tantrum. Just kids have tantrums, and you help them work through them, and eventually they learn, but it's not right now.
Right. And you need that. You need other moms to validate you and to even give you tips and ideas. And the more you seek out those friendships, girls, if you're not doing it, don't do this alone. Like, really don't. Find your people. Your people will help you.
Yeah. And I think also too, we've moved around a lot because my husband right now is in school. And so he's doing rotations for anesthesia. And so we've had to move every 6 months. And so we have not stayed in the same place for a long time. And so we've had to start over every time we move and like find new friends. And there have been a lot of starting over. And so sometimes there's a little bit of a temptation to be like, I just don't want to do it this time. I don't want to do it again. Like, it takes so much work up front, but every single time it's like the best part of everywhere that we've been. And the last place that we were, we in like our church community and in just, we didn't have a lot of interaction because my husband was at work all day and I was at home with the girls. And so the only place that we would meet people was at church, but there weren't a lot of people in our same stage of life in our ward. And there was a lady that lived across the street. She was 84 years old. And we ran into each other one day and she was like, oh, I don't recognize you. Are you new? And she was like, I'm going to bring you some brownies. And so she did that day, like 2 hours later. So she went home, made the brownies and brought them over. She was so sweet. But so she was like, would you like to go on a walk? And she kind of adopted me. And it was like it was the biggest blessing. This 84-year-old woman who just became my best friend during that time that we were there, and to have her wisdom and to be able to like get her, she loved my girls, and to have somebody else when my husband was at work all day long and he would come home at like 7:30 and he would shovel in some food and then we would put the girls to bed and then we would go to bed ourselves because he had to be up at 5:30 the next morning. So we did not get any time together. So it was a very lonely time. And her friendship for me was such a gift. And so I think there's so much value in those friendships at your same level and the people that are in your same stage of life. But her friendship to me has meant more than anything, because she took me in and kind of adopted me and just, lifted me up when I really needed it and needed a friend.
I just love that. And I love how that speaks to the barrier that can be perceived as an age gap doesn't have to be. You know, that somebody with such a different, you know, stage of life could be such a friend to you. It's so important to remember. I just recently we did an activity with our friends at church where we spun around on this having like this trapeze dare to dream experience. It was so amazing. And I was the planner at the activity. And we had have some older women in our church community that I thought, oh, let's plan something on the ground, because I'm trying to accommodate old, young, all stages. Not everybody wants to fly around in a trapeze device like I do.
Sign me up.
What was so funny that surprised me, and it's like, oh, never underestimate the age, is this cute little Lena gal in our ward, and I don't even know her age exactly, but she's above 70, I think, comes walking in, one of the first people there, saying, okay, when are you going to get me up in the air? And she just, no one else, like other people were nervous to do it, but we put her up in the air. And then another one of the older sisters was like, well, if Lena's doing it, I better do it. So our first few gals to fly were the oldest girls in the room.
Oh, that's amazing.
These older women, gray hair, the whole thing, and they're up there flying, just loving it. So everyone else was like, okay, well, I guess I better do this. They were so fearless. It was hilarious and awesome to see. So yeah, it doesn't matter your age. I mean, I feel like, I'm 51 and just now revisiting this dream of Pretty Sisters that I had started 20 years ago. It was actually one of the greatest things I've said before that I gave up when I was mothering, that I started it and then I just didn't have the time for it. And so it was one of those things I sacrificed and put on the altar and just set it aside. And now 20 years later, I'm finally coming back to it. And I could have the tendency to say, oh, I wish I would have and stuck with it, but I couldn't. Some things just have to give. And this was something that had to give. But here I am 51, which is old, but not old, like it's old. You could say it's older to be starting something like this, but I'm choosing to believe like, no, I'm young and I have the energy. And I think that's the key, is the age doesn't matter so much. It's like, what do you have the energy to do? And then do that. And you can find success and joy and fulfillment at any age. And you can be swinging around the room in your 70s or 80s and just showing these young girls off. So I love that you created that friendship. That's a beautiful thing. So, okay, I want to come to another topic that I think is important, because we talked about our sisters can be friends and these friendships are important, but we don't always have access to that. And especially I remember in the quiet moments of mothering, and actually not even at your stage, at my stage too. I think that there's something super important that is invaluable that we can tap into to tutor and to help us. And I know you believe this too. Do you want to talk about that? Because you've been coming close to really understanding divine tutoring. And what has that meant for you?
Well, I think when I was younger, I always hated the idea that trials are there to make you stronger, because I was like, well, can't I just be happy and weak? But it really has been such a process. And I also, when I was younger, I would hear people talking about relying on the Savior or turning to the Lord or things like that. And I was like, okay, but how?
Yeah. But how could we shortcut having to do it?
Yes.
Right? Like what's the easy path? And then I won't even have to bother him.
Yes. Yeah, seriously. Can't I just do it on my own? But I think I was always like, okay, well, can I have like a step-by-step guide? Like step 1, pray. Step 2, hi, yes, I'd like to cash in one of my atonement tokens now. Yes. So I wanted like this like step. And instead, what I've learned is that it's actually so much better than that, because it's so personalized. And that has been such a unique and tender journey for me to go on to go from, and I think it's a journey that lasts a lifetime. So I'm certainly not at the end of the journey. But just the incremental and personal and deliberate process and the things that he's taught me, and like the just little by little, one by one. And I always laugh because we talk about line upon line. Well, sometimes I feel like it's letter upon letter. It's like so much slower. Yeah, exactly. It's so much slower than I want it to be. But it's just this transformation process that I look back and I remember thinking like, I don't think I can be the kind of person that, fill in the blank. And we all do that to ourselves, don't we? Like, just, I don't think I can be the kind of person who does this. And for me, it was like with motherhood and my need for accomplishment and achievement, I was like, I don't think I can be the kind of person who finds a lot of fulfillment in motherhood, or who loves this aspect. I love parts of it and I love my girls, of course, but I was like, I don't think I can be everything that I want to be or wish to be. And just little by little, he's like giving me just the right experiences and just the right amount of guidance to teach me over time that, like he made me the way I am on purpose, and gave me the personality that he gave me on purpose and the life that he gave me on purpose. And so tailoring those things together and like learning what my personality and my life, how they fit together has been really beautiful.
Yeah. And it is something that happens line upon line, you know, just precept upon precept. I think there's a song about that. But anyhow, I think that is such an important thing to learn. Again, so proud of you. You're just such this wise young mother. But I've come up with, or at least something that I've practiced when it comes to this that I think is super powerful, is learning how to, I believe that we have this ability to have inspiration and divine inspiration for our life at any point in time, right? It's just freely accessible to us. And we just need to practice tuning into it and becoming aware of it and not forgetting to ask, because it really can be as simplistic as asking for help. And so I have this habit, and something I teach is to ask 2 questions every morning. And that is to ask, and I do this in prayer, what do I need to continue doing? And what do I need to stop doing? Because I feel like I can get that specific on, you know, just in the moment. And it doesn't even have to be just once a day. It can just be throughout the day. Like what do I do more of? What do I do less of? And just kind of stay like in this, just stay in a lane. And it's super helpful because sometimes we can't easily get the whole picture or the whole answer. And I love having big goals that I'm working towards, but I'm talking about just like the really small, simple things we can, once we learn this superpower to tap into, we can say, okay, what do I do more of? What do I do less of? And then start to listen and pay attention. And that's really helpful, because when you feel like you're in that zone of following that, and just in a minute by minute, day by day, do this, do that, do this, do that, and just get better on listening to what that is on how we feel.
Yeah.
Then we can stay in this alignment of having this divine guidance all the time, which I think is amazing that we can do that it can be that simplistic. And then I think in that process of doing it, we can start to, and I know this is something that you had mentioned before that you're learning to do, is not chase the good life, the happy life down the road. Like, I'm going to be happy when these kids go to sleep. I'm going to be happy when, you know, whatever. You can fill in the blank, and you can always be pushing it down the road. But if we can learn to that contentment in the moment, I think it's really helpful. What have you found in that journey of trying to not chase it?
I think for me, I love excitement and adventures, and we're very, very, very similar in that.
Yes, I remember I was so proud of her when you got married. You were working for me at the time, but you called me one day saying, you were probably nervous to say it, I'm guessing. I don't know if you were or weren't. Knowing me, you shouldn't have been nervous, because she calls to say, I think you quit. I can't remember if you wanted time off or if you quit. Either way, I was excited, because what she said is, she's like, we have this opportunity to go to Europe and live in Europe. For how long did you go live there? The summer?
In Madrid? It was, the summer.
The summer. And I was like, oh, girl, go. Like, yes, absolutely. Yay. That makes me so proud that you're seizing the opportunity. And you've always been like that. And I know you've had big dreams.
Yeah. Well, and we did a summer in London during a portion of my husband's schooling. And after he graduates, we have a few months before his licensing process goes through. So we're going to go live in Italy. So I love a big adventure.
Love this.
So don't get me wrong.
You're not letting kids stop you.
Oh no. Bring
see, that's right. You just make it happen, and it's messy, and you don't know how. You know, sometimes you can't even imagine it with 2 toddlers, but you can.
Yeah.
You totally can make it happen.
But so I love a good big adventure.
Yes.
And I think everyone needs to have like their next big adventure in mind. But I also think that if we live only for the big adventures or the big accomplishments or like the big dreams checking off, percentage wise and proportionally, most of our life is not that.
Right.
And so if we only enjoy the big stuff, and we only enjoy the big adventure, we only enjoy the trip to Europe, we only enjoy finally reaching this big dream or goal that we have, then we won't enjoy most of life, like proportionally. And so I I think it's also really important to learn, and it is a learning process sometimes, especially for somebody like me that's such an achiever.
It takes a lot of awareness.
Yeah, and to learn how to enjoy the in-between stuff and the mundane and the ordinary, because most of life is ordinary. It's the making food and it's the sitting down to dinner. And so to find ways to like turn the ordinary into something that is meaningful and enjoyable and cozy and wonderful.
Yeah. Well, and it can be as easy, I think, when you're doing that, because our happiness has a lot to do with our expectations. And so if you can still be, I mean, yes, be excited about the adventures and plan the big trips and all the big fun things and celebrate them and do all of that. But if you're expecting that to be your life all the time, you're going to be sorely disappointed. And so you just have to, it's just all about managing the expectations. And just, you know, when you understand and expect that some of your life is going to be doing the day to day, and that's just what you do, and you can learn to love that routine, or at least you can learn to love it by just having it show up as exactly what it is, and just having, changing those expectations and being realistic with it.
And creating a daily life that you love, not just like the big goals, but creating like curating a day that is fulfilling and happy and exciting and fun for you. Like just the little things of like eating sourdough with butter. Like that's like, one of the best things ever.
Well, and that's where gratitude, just being grateful for all of the parts of the day, and that you can have sourdough bread with butter. I mean, that's, you know, that's wonderful, delicious. And when you can recognize and be grateful for that, it changes everything. Okay. So you got these two beautiful little girls.
Yes.
And I know you want to raise them as pretty sisters.
Yes.
What is that like for you? I know we've talked about this.
Well, I love the definition of pretty in Pretty Sisters, because it actually has very little to do with your appearance. Although I'm all for like getting a cute outfit and getting ready and stuff.
Well, so my sisters nicknamed me Pretty. It was born from them being older and me being the little doll-like sister, and I was just their pretty little sister. Yeah. And can't you see how that, now that you have these two beautiful daughters of your own, how that would just be adopted? Because you can't help but look at them and think they're just these pretty little girls.
Totally.
They're pretty little sisters.
And there are times when I'm like sitting in Relief Society or something, and I look around and I see all these women who look all so different, and every age and every stage of life. And I just think, wow, like this is a room full of beautiful women. Yes. And so it really is not the physical appearance, or at least not the way that the world teaches that, or society teaches it.
It's who they are.
Yeah. It's their divinity shining through.
Yes.
So I'm raising two little girls, and I want them to grow up with that perception of beauty and of their divine like femininity shining through. And so for me, I remember, I mean, we all have the things that we are more insecure about, or like physical things. And one of mine growing up was, I had a cousin once who we were on a boat, and he looks down and he goes, "Lauren, you have finger toes." And you know how your older cousin's opinions mean so much to you. And so I was mortified, and that like stayed with me my whole growing up years. And it was something that I was always super self-conscious about.
And he probably never thought about it again. Just such a boy comment to just like make an observation and not filter it, and just to speak it out loud.
Yes. Yeah. Never gave it a second thought, but I gave it every thought. Yes. But so that was one that I grew up, and it's not like I let it rule my life. Right. I still went on the boat, and but
all of a sudden you're like, I have finger toes.
And that was something I assigned to my identity. And so I remember when my daughter, Mandy, my oldest, was born, like a couple weeks after she was born, I remember looking at her feet and seeing her toes, and just, they were these beautiful long toes. And I was like, oh, if she wasted 1 ounce of energy or 1 second of her life worrying about this or being insecure about this, I would be so sad. Yes. What a waste of time and energy, and completely not important. And I feel like the way that we look is the least important thing about us.
Yes.
There's so much more to us. And like I said, I'm all for, feeling pretty and getting dressed up, wearing pink, doing your makeup. It's fun. But it's who you are that is the most important thing. And I think that's where confidence comes from. And so I'm trying to teach that to my girls. Like, I never want them to hear me say anything bad about my body or my looks or things like that. Like, I never, and not only that, but I just don't want my looks to be a focus at all.
Right.
Because it's not important. It's the least important thing about me.
Although I do try to get my girls to wear pink lipstick.
Oh, yes.
And nobody will. I've overworn it in our house. They'll be going to prom and I'm like, but some pink lip gloss. And I'm like trying to put it on and like, no, mom, I'm good. It's like, oh, shoot. Why does no one want to wear pink? No, they do want to wear pink. But that is such an important thing, is just to help. And it's tricky. I mean, as girls, because now I've raised 3 teenage girls, and wanting them to just, as you can imagine me with my whole pretty sister ideology, it's like, I just want them to feel pretty to their core.
They can't have any insecurities.
Yes. I've wanted that for them so badly. And we've had moments of success and moments of non-success because they are girls and or even boys. I have both boys and girls, and they all go through times of insecurities. But one thing I love, I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast or not, but my daughter, Sophia, I actually wrote about this story in my book that's coming out. She has this ability to see herself as beautiful no matter what. And not that she's not beautiful, because she is, but there's been stages of life where she's not like outwardly beautiful in the way that she thinks she is. And I've just smiled and laughed about it as we've gone through these stages of life with her, and just in awe of like, where is this confidence coming from? Because you really don't look that good. Like, she would dress herself up in outfits as a little girl and come up in this like, ta-da, look at me. And she'd have like some weird clip in her hair and some weird thing on. And she's just ready to go out into the world as if she's the most beautiful thing ever. And I would have to just like stop myself from wanting to rearrange her, like just change the outfit, because it really did look horrible. But I would just like, yes, you are a sight to behold. Like, truly. And in fact, several times I'd snap a picture and like send it off to Nikki or, friends, and we'd be laughing about Nancy Thomas. She'd just be laughing like, I can't believe you're letting her leave like that. I'm like, I am. I'm just going to let her go. But she said that Sophie discovered at one point in time when she was younger, I think at the age of, I can't remember what age, but the awareness that she had freckles came. And I remember her wanting to buy rubs and like looking up like things to get rid of her freckles, because I don't know if someone had made a comment to her or whatnot, but at some point she decided, these aren't pretty and I shouldn't have freckles. And so like you, when you just don't want him to notice something like the long toes, and you don't want him to associate that with anything negative. So I explained to her, because she also was like, why do I have all these freckles and, the other kids don't? Like, why me? And I said those were angel kisses. And I just told her how beautiful she was and how I loved her freckles. And I just kept telling her that, like, that's what made her unique and beautiful. Because that's the thing, is we all do have different attributes. But I think the key is finding a way to love ourselves as we are. So I didn't make her more beautiful and fix that for her. Sure, there could be some lotions or things out there that soften them, and she was looking for them, but I was like, no. This is what makes you you. Yeah. And let's celebrate that. And then she bought into it. And then fast forward years later, I catch her and her sister Bella in swimming suits, having come in from out of the sun, and they're in front of the mirror and they're examining themselves. And I come in and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's an after sun freckle check. And they're like looking for freckles. And then Bella, who doesn't have them, has a few, is searching because she wants to prove that she has freckles too. And Sophie's just like, look at all my freckles. They've come out. They're making me more beautiful. Oh. And I know, I just sat and smiled, almost teary-eyed, thinking, yes, like she has found a way to make something that could be seen by the world as unbeautiful. That there are actually lotions out there to try to diminish. And instead of buying into that, she learned to embrace it as something beautiful, to the point that her little sister is trying to find freckles too. Like out there, like, I want to be more like you. Let's freckle me up. And I think that's the key. It's just embracing who you are, exactly how you are, in those God-given strengths, and finding that to be beautiful, because she's covered with freckles, and one might say it's not pretty, but
she's so gorgeous.
But it makes her so pretty to me, to her, and because she owns it, I think to everyone else, because she just shows up like, look at my freckles that you don't have.
Yeah. Well, and too, like, the feeling that you had as a mother, seeing her disliking her freckles and then seeing her accept them too.
Like, the change was amazing.
Like, I just wonder what our heavenly parents look down and think when we are beating ourselves up over like this either physical or also like our personality traits too, that they gave to us or planted within us, or like the little pieces of themselves that they put into us that we hate, or that we criticize ourselves.
I often will say to my kids, when they criticize themselves, I'll take it personally. I'll be like, hey, I put my best effort into you. Like, I made you to be that great, or I made that in you purposefully. Like, don't criticize it. Like that was you're my best work, you know? And they pause and they're like, oh, and then they feel a little bad criticizing themselves, because it is, you know, not that I'm trying to make it all about me, but I'm just trying to like, this, you were hard work to me, just like that. Don't you criticize this, you know, magnificent masterpiece that I created. 9 months. Thank you very much. And actually I say 18 because I always felt like it's 9 months to make them, and it's 9 months to feel like yourself again.
Yes.
I mean, I know some women just are back to normal in a hot second, but I always felt like it was a 9 months up the hill and 9 months down the hill before I could even like, you know, feel myself. So it's a lot of work, and I honor all of you mothers that are doing this, and I honor you. So we're going to start to wrap this up, but we can't do it without me asking you just a little question. I love to ask all of my guests, because I'm a big believer that we should always be dreaming, believing, and creating. And I know that you are. You're finding a way to do that in the thick of your mothering. And how is that showing up for you?
Well, I think it's important to still be creating, even at any stage of life. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, oh, I'm too busy because of work, or I'm too busy because of this. Like, I think creating is what makes us feel like the most fulfilled, happy version of ourselves. And so if we let that die, then a little piece of us will die.
Right. And you have to stay being yourself, because these kids, they're only on loan to you for a little bit, and then you're going to launch them, and then you get to come back to you.
Yeah. And also we want to model that for them too. Like, you should also seek fulfillment and creativity and all these things. So so for me, my creative outlet has always been planning things, whether it's like, I will literally sit down at my computer and I will plan an imaginary trip that I either can't afford to go on or won't have time to go on, but I will plan trips just for fun, because I think it's exciting.
I love that. That's so fun.
Or like parties. And usually the parties I end up doing.
Yes.
Like we've
and
done.
Some of the trips you do. I mean, you maybe aren't doing all the imaginary trips, but you're doing them. And I bet if we were to have this conversation in 20 years, you might, and maybe we'll do it. We'll like have a date in 20 years from now to talk again. And I bet you will have in your life found a way to put all these trips in.
Yeah.
Because once you can envision it, that is the secret of manifesting.
Yep.
Like, envision it. And to the point that you're planning it, writing it down. I mean, that is such a secret key to dreaming, because you're going to make all those things come true in time. And if you're patient and just dream it up, put it on the shelf, I bet in 20 years, you're going to have done all these trips.
Yeah, that's so true. We even have you know how you can create like a bucket list on Airbnb, and so you can add trips to it. Sometimes when you pull up, there's like a really cool mansion or something, so we'll add that to we call that our someday bucket list.
I love it.
We're gonna go there someday. But so yeah, I love planning. So I plan trips, or I plan like when we got home from London, we did an afternoon tea with a bunch of friends, and so we did like a very British afternoon tea. It was so fun. But so I've done stuff like that. Just that is my creative outlet. Like, some people are painters and some people are dancers. And for me, I am a planner, and that's my creative outlet.
And I bet the other girls that you're inviting to and participating with in these things just appreciate it so much.
It builds the sisterhood so much to do something fun like that.
Yes, you're such a good, pretty sister. I mean, that is what this is all about, is getting and gathering with friends and supporting one another and celebrating each other. So I love that you're planning.
Yeah, and having fun together, doing something exciting.
And you have been been planning an annual retreat, which I love. I mean, this is such a Pretty Sister thing to do. Tell us about that. And I know you've got one coming up, right?
Yeah. So this will be the third one.
Mhm.
The first one was when we were living in Maine, and then we did one in Utah. And last year we didn't do it because I had just had a baby. So
that's a good reason. Just stop. Just set it aside for a minute.
Yeah.
Pick it back up when you can.
So then this year will be the third one. So basically it's a Christ-centered women's retreat because two of my favorite things are gathering with women and talking with my friends about Jesus.
I love that.
And so this is just basically me roping all my friends into coming for a weekend. And
but that takes a lot of work to plan and to, make a fabulous weekend retreat where everybody can
really
enjoy
fun.
one another together.
Yeah. And and I say my friends, but a lot of it is friends I haven't met yet because people will bring someone, or I've had people that I didn't even know sign up that heard it from a friend of a friend of a friend. And it's so much fun, and it's really special because anytime we talk about Jesus, it's special. But this one is the atmosphere is so fun because we go to a cabin up on a lake usually, and we gather around and it's cozy, and we sit on our couches with blankets and we talk about Jesus. And it's just one of those times where like the Spirit just washes over you and you feel like you can breathe again.
And you fill your bucket in every way, and then you can go home and be better yourself.
Yeah. So it's a weekend with Jesus. And it's
what's
really fun.
What's the name of it? Let's tell everybody.
It's called Gathered in His Name. It's a reference to the scripture in Matthew where it says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. And that's what we feel when we go. It's
just inviting him in.
Yeah.
I'd love that. And your next one is
it's in March,
up, right? In March?
March 14th and 15th.
Is there a place that women can go if they want to sign up?
I do have a website. It's gatheredinhisname.com.
Okay.
So
fantastic. Yeah. All right, Pretty Sisters. That's an opportunity that you might want to take advantage of. Gathered in His name.
I would love to have Pretty Sisters there.
Yes, fun. Well, and that's what this is all about, is this just creating wonderful opportunities for women to gather. I think that's great that you're doing that, and you're such a fabulous person.
And I don't make any money off of it. It's just totally like...
But you know what?
That there's anything wrong with that either.
Right.
It's a labor of love.
Yes. And whether you make money or not, making money is a really good thing. And we'll talk about that on another podcast, because everyone deserves to make money and to be able to earn money for sharing their gifts and talents. So, okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Lauren, so much for this conversation.
Thank you. This has been so fun.
So fun.
So fun to hang out with my pretty sister.
Yes. Thank you. And I hope that some of the words that we've shared, especially to you other young mothers who might be listening, or future mothers, or at any stage, have taken something from this. So again, thank you for being here. You are so worthy, so pretty yourself, and we'll just say stay pretty until next week, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.